Good day, Team Telco. In this training, I'm going to take you through the accounts receivable pre-collection quality assurance process. So this is a standard operating procedure of what you do prior to passing on an account for collection. These are steps that you take in order to ensure that the account is actually ready for a collection. So our agenda in this training will be as follows. First of all, we want to go through the quality assurance process overview. We're going to look at the different purpose and objectives, how we run a BPMN workflow, and I'll explain that to you just now, and the key decision points. And then in the QA of reconciliation tasks, we'll look at invoice generation, balance reconciliation, and top-up processing. Then we'll look at quality verification steps, which includes the circuit status checks, activity tag validation, and subscription verification. And then lastly, how we complete the pre-collection completion. And so what do we need to look out for in order to ensure that this account is ready for collection? So let's start with the pre-collection quality assurance process overview. What are the key principles that we want to follow when we're doing a pre-collection QA? First of all, the key principles is that, first of all, we want to ensure that we execute tasks sequentially. So you must follow the steps in the order. And then number two, we want to ensure that we do a complete job. Please don't miss out anything. Number three, we want to ensure that at the end of our QA, we've documented and recorded all of the actions that we've taken. And number four, we want to ensure that if there are any discrepancies or issues that we encounter, that those are resolved within a 24-hour period. How will we know whether we've done a great job? Well, we will know when all the QA verification steps have been completed. We will also know when the account discrepancies have been resolved. We will also know that we've succeeded when pre-collection events are all processed. And then also we will know that we've succeeded if we've got a complete audit trail of everything that has happened. And we'll look at what that looks like as we proceed with this training. So let's look at what a BPMN workflow looks like. Basically, a BPMN workflow is a business process standardized notation workflow, and it uses various symbols such as this rounded oblong here, which is what's used at the start and end of processes. It also uses this diamond, it means a decision. It uses rectangular boxes, which just denote a general process. And then we also use color coding so that we can also tell what type of processes we are working with. So what are the different steps that we're going to take in this quality assurance process that we've embarked on? The first step is we're going to establish what product are we actually dealing with for this customer, the product type, in other words. And the major decision point that we need to make in this step is this a broadband circuit or not? Is this customer a broadband customer or not a broadband customer? Because depending on whether our answer to that question, that's what will determine what steps we take next. If it is a broadband customer, then we will have to check certain things like the circuit information, whether the circuit is up or it's down. We'll need to verify the circuit status and then continue with the verification process after we've done that. However, if it is not a broadband circuit, we're going to skip those circuit checks and we're going to proceed directly to other steps in our process. So that's the significance of deciding, first of all, whether we've got a broadband customer that we're dealing with or not. And so just to quickly give you a look of what this would look like, is that if we were on the customer's contact card, we would check whether this is a broadband customer. And how we will know it's a broadband customer is that this area, PPPoE accounts, is populated and there is an actual internet username, and we'll be able to tell the circuit status. If this customer is not a broadband customer, this area over here will be missing or will not be populated at all. It'll say 0. So that's what we're looking for in this very first step. So that should be simple enough, and we can take it from there. Right. So then we go on to the next steps 2 and 3, which are all about circuit and tag verification. So step 2, we want to see whether if this is a broadband customer, we want to check the circuit. So you'll have seen very quickly in what I just did that we want to verify whether the circuit is active in Odoo. If it's inactive, then we need to stop this entire process and investigate why is the customer's circuit inactive. We'll raise a different scheduled activity in order to deal with this matter. If it is active, then we can continue with our tag verification. And in tag verification, what we're looking at is whether the customer has had utilization in the months of the billing that we are wanting to check for, and we're going to look at whether they've got all the activity tags on their customer card. Let's have a quick look at what that looks like. So again, we've checked that the customer this is an internet broadband circuit, and indeed we find out that it is. And so here we're going to check whether the status of this customer account is active or not. Once we realize that it is active, we're going to continue with the rest of the checks. However, if we found that the status was disabled or inactive, we're going to have to go and further investigate that. Maybe we're going to even have to raise a ticket in order to investigate that. But in this case, the circuit is active. So we're going to go on and check which activity tags does it have. You can see that the customer was active in January, February, March, April, May, and we don't yet have any other tags. So they've been active all of these months, and so we expect that they've been billed for all of these months. There we go. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we mean when we say that we're checking for activity tags. So we've completed steps 2 and 3, which are all about checking whether this is a broadband customer, checking their activity, and also checking the activity tags. We can go on to the next activity. As we said, if a discrepancy is found, we're going to launch a support ticket immediately, and we're going to schedule a follow-up activity for ourselves to come back to this account once this issue has been resolved. Let's continue to step number 4, which is we're going to assess the circuit uptime. And we saw that in the previous screen that we looked at. We've checked that the circuit is actually up. If it is not up, we're going to have to raise a ticket. If it's down, we're going to raise a technical support ticket. And then we're going to wait for that resolution, which should happen in 24 hours, in order for us to continue with our collections activity. If it's not monitored or has been down for a long time, we're going to raise a ticket for the product org to investigate this and make sure that we can bring the circuit back online before we can do anything else. Otherwise, if it's up, we can continue with our process. The next thing we're going to do is subscription validation. What does subscription validation mean? We're going to check that this contact has an active subscription that's running on their account, because we've checked that they're actually utilizing the service and we're satisfied that they are utilizing the service. The next thing we want to check is that they have a valid subscription, and that valid subscription is billing them continuously for the correct service and billing them accurately for the correct service, and that there are no suspension flags, and that we have valid subscription dates. So if we just take a quick look at that, we're going to look at our more there. We see that the customer does have one active subscription running. And we're going to have a look at that subscription. We can see that this subscription has a particular order date when it started, and the next invoice is due on the 1st of July. And so this is a very active subscription. We can see it's active because the tag at the right-hand corner there says it is in progress. If we see other tags like churned or paused or draft, then we know that we need to investigate this account or the subscription. But everything looks in order here. We're also going to just have a quick check of the invoices, but we'll do that in the next step. So let's just go back and see what we're up to here. So we've checked that the subscription is valid and that it is still be in progress and that it is being invoiced accurately. Then next, we're going to step 6 and 7. We're going to make sure that the invoices are being raised accurately and that the balance is reconciled. How are we going to do that? Number 6, we're going to do a quick invoice generation check. And here we're just checking that the customer has been invoiced for all the months that they're actually active, including the current month, which may not have an active activity tag yet, but we trust that unless they've terminated the account, that they continue to be billed for the service. So we're going to check that they've got full invoicing, and then we're also going to check that all these invoices have been reconciled or marked as paid if they have been paid, and that any invoices that are not yet marked as paid will then be escalated for the collection activity. So how do we do that? Let's have a quick look. So we'll go to the invoices over here and we can see that they've been invoiced for the following months: January, February, March, April, May, and June. It would seem that January, March, April, May have been paid for this customer. However, it looks like from this screen that the February one hasn't yet been paid and the June one hasn't been paid. If we open up the February one just to check whether there are any outstanding payments on this February one, we can see actually that there is one unallocated payment on this February invoice and we can add it there. But this seems to have been paid on the 3rd of June. So this actually means that this invoice is not for this payment is not for this particular invoice. It's probably for the invoice in June. So we're going to go back and mark this June invoice as paid instead of the February invoice, which seems to be actually unpaid at the moment. And so either it's a case of we need to investigate where the customer's invoice is, or whether this was truly not paid, or whether maybe the payment went astray somewhere. So you can see there some of the things that will come up as you go ahead and you reconcile this. So let's go back to our activity. So we've done an invoice check. We've matched any open balances with any open payments that are there, and we've realized that there is one invoice that will probably have to escalate for collection or for finding the proof of payment that the customer made. Let's move on to step number 8. We also want to check on the customer's statement that there are no top-up invoices that haven't yet been recognized, and also whether there are any activity tags that might not have been put on their account, so that we can make sure that they've been invoiced for all the months. And again, we do that very quickly by going back to the customer's contact card that we were on. And this time we're going to actually look at the statement, customer's statement. And the customer's statement gives us pretty similar information that we looked at. We can see that the amount outstanding is at 137, and which seems to go together with the February invoice that doesn't seem to have been matched with anything. In fact, the February invoice does seem to have been being captured. There does seem to be a payment for February and a payment for March and April and May and June, but there doesn't seem to be any payment for January. So that might be what we want to actually investigate. The statement gives us more rich information than maybe the invoices by themselves. What this also means is that the payments that were matched with the other invoices were matched wrongly. They were matched to invoices that are not the invoices for those particular payments. And that's why a statement will always give you better information, because the statement tells you exactly when the payment was made, which makes it easier to match it to the relevant invoice. Anyway, we know that there's one invoice that seems to have no payment matched against it. So we need to certainly do an investigation about this. And because this is an invoice that probably dates all the way back to January that doesn't seem to be matched, I would say that this is a reconciliation issue and it needs to be raised as such. We can't continue with reconciling this particular account until we've actually raised a reconciliation account. So I'd already tagged or created an activity for AR quality assurance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to this account doesn't have an opening balance, and it does have all the invoices, and it does have a subscription running. But what we've discovered that this account has a payment outstanding dating back to January. The customer has a good track record of payment. We need to investigate the January payment in our records to ensure that it was not missed or misallocated to another account. And then if not, we need to follow up with the client for payment. Okay, so all of that I'm going to highlight and I'm going to put it in blue, because then once I've done this activity, I'm going to schedule the next activity, which is going to be an accounts receivable recon, because I want to investigate what happened to the January payment. And I'm going to allocate it to the relevant account manager who's on the contact card for them to investigate, and I'm going to schedule. So my comment, as I've done this pre-collection quality assurance, is in bright blue. The account manager will see that, and then I've allocated it to the account manager for a reconciliation. So let's go back to our process. We were on step 8. We top up. We check whether there's any top-ups, and we did that through the statement. And through the statement, we could see very clearly that the customer doesn't have any top-up invoices. They've only got mainline invoices. And then we've actually gone ahead and raised a recon activity. We scheduled a recon activity with specific details with a 24-hour deadline. Then step 9, we want to finish off now. We've done steps 1 to 8 successfully. If all items in the before that have been done are all completed and it's all a green light, we're going to then go ahead and assign this to the DOS contact center for collection. But as you saw in the previous one that I did, I couldn't go ahead and assign it to DOS contact center because it still needed a little bit more recon activity. And so I've assigned it to the account manager with a 24-hour completion deadline. And I've included bright blue details in order for this to stand out to them when they do their recon. Then lastly, Documentation and standards. We want to record all actions taken during the recon. We want to include timestamps and initials on all notes, which Odoo automatically does. We want to be specific and detailed in our descriptions, which I think I was when I wrote up what happened here and what I've seen. And then we want to reference any support tickets and external communications if necessary. And we're going to document the next steps or the follow-up requirements that are required. So it's very important that as we do these things, we're very detailed in our documentation and our requirements. So let's end off with a couple of things in terms of escalation procedures. Which issues do we escalate to technical? We issue circuit problems, PCRF discrepancies, and any extended downtime. If the issue is an account issue, such as subscription, invoice discrepancies, or collection issues, we escalate those to the account management and the billing team, and the collection we send to DOS call center. The timeline requirements are that we must attend to all reconnectivities within 24 hours of them being raised. Any support tickets must also be resolved within 24 hours of them being raised, and any pre-collection events must be done on the same day of processing. And finally, in terms of the quality assurance, we must verify each step before proceeding. We must double check all our data entries. We must ensure there's completeness of documentation, and we must review escalations for resolution and schedule follow-ups for resolution. So the key takeaways from this training are that you must always follow steps sequentially, verify before proceeding, document everything thoroughly, use blue text for team items, and meet the 24-hour deadline for resolution. What you must never do is skip verification steps, proceed with discrepancies, miss documentation requirements, ignore escalation procedures, and process incomplete quality assurance checks. The formula for success is that complete QA verification plus proper documentation plus timely escalation equals a successful pre-collection processing, which will also more than likely result in a successful collection activity. If you've got any questions or you'd like to discuss anything in relation to this standard operating procedure or this QA process, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to the head of the finance department and ask them to walk you through or talk you through any of these processes and procedures, especially where you are not sure. Thank you so much and have a good day.